This is the way it feels to move through summer in Lululemon. Iconic Align softness without the front seam. For our smoothest look and feel ever, summer won't know what hit it. Stretch your limits in the non-stop flexibility of the new Lululemon Align No-Line Pant in select stores and at Lululemon.com.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at Polestar.com.
Make your next vacation unforgettable on Royal Caribbean's newest ship, Star of the Seas. It's everything you've loved about every family vacation you've ever been on, with mind-blowing thrills at the largest water park at sea, 7 onboard pools for every level of chill, more than 40 ways to dine and drink, and even more to enjoy at our award-winning private island, Perfect Day at Coco Cay. This is the new Star of the Seas. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, you are listening to a bonus episode of Ratchet and Respectable. I'm back in Maryland. I had to drive home yesterday from Jersey. Woo! Yesterday was a lot. This is exclusively a Diddy episode. Hopefully we don't have to do any more bonus episodes for a while because your girl is tired. I've been covering this trial for the last 6 weeks. It has finally come to kind of a conclusion. There's still sentencing left. If you're not looking for Diddy content, but you want to engage with Ratchet and Respectable, I put up an episode yesterday on Wednesday that is mostly not Diddy. There are other things going on in the world, and quite honestly, I can't wait to start talking about them more often now that this trial is on its way to wrapping. We still have sentencing to get through. As of right now, that's scheduled for October. As you are well aware, as I mentioned at the end of Wednesday's episode, the verdict is in for the Diddy trial. He was found guilty for 2 counts of transporting prostitutes and not guilty for the 2 counts of sex trafficking and not guilty for the RICO charge. I am shocked is not the right word. As a matter of self-preservation, I don't let my expectations for most things get too high. I'm fully aware that's a trauma response. Just after, investing in things like, Hillary Clinton's win and then Kamala Harris's win and then all the things that are currently happening in our current administration, I have hoped far too often that people would do, quote and unquote, the right thing, the thing that is in the best interest of others. And that thing keeps not happening. So I've learned to, basically not to hope. That sounds so sad. That's so anti-Obama, but it's, as I said, trauma response, self-preservation. It's not the outcome I wanted. I wanted him to be found guilty on everything. I knew that sex trafficking especially was going to be a reach. Although I did think that there was hope on the sex trafficking. In the closing arguments, the prosecution said every instance of a freak off or a hotel night or a wild king night isn't necessarily trafficking. But if you can find one instance with Cassie or one instance with Jane of them being forced or coerced into having sex with an entertainer or an escort, that would be considered sex trafficking. And I was like, oh, well, Jane, for sure, there's at least one that's very cut and dry. Like the night that they got into the fight, Jane says she hit him first, but Diddy brutally beat her. And then while she was all banged up, forced her to, go put herself together, put on an outfit, called an entertainer, and he forced her to perform oral sex on someone for hours and hours. That's her testimony. With Cassie, the video that we saw of her running from the hotel room and Diddy catches her at the elevator bank and beats her, she's literally fleeing from a freak off, and then he comes and beats her up on camera, and then we can see him dragging her back to the room. Is that not coercion and force? Like, it's very obvious. There's also other instances with Cassie where an escort saying, I was in the room and I saw him drag her by her hair, and then I heard her apologizing in the other room. I heard what sounded like slapping. I thought at least, those two instances with Cassie would be very clear. So all you need is one. Like, there's a sure possibility for a conviction on sex trafficking. But I knew just, there are also texts from Cassie and Jane talking about wanting to do freak-offs, wanting to do hotel nights, Jane arranging one in order to get Diddy to come back from a vacation with another woman. I knew it was complicated, but I thought there was a possibility. Not a big one, but one nevertheless. Rico, I just thought it was going to happen. I've covered this trial every single day for the duration of the trial. I've done many bonus episodes on here in which most times, not even every time, but most times where there was an instance of Rico, I would usually yell, Rico! Like, I yelled it no less than 50 times. I didn't yell it for every instance, just the ones that were blatantly clear as outlined in the grand jury indictment. I don't know how they didn't convict on Rico. I'm baffled. I did reach out to our friend Kim, former Cook County State's attorney. She has been on the podcast multiple times throughout this trial to lend legal insight. Very graciously, she shares her expertise. She's been a prosecutor for, at minimum, 20 years. I think it's over 20, but at minimum, 20. So she shares her great insight with us, and I'm forever thankful because this is out of my depth. I'm like, what happened? And then also, like, what's next? We are going to speak to Kim a little bit later in the episode, but I want to go over some of the aftermath of the verdict that happened yesterday. Because there was the verdict, and then there was so much more. Like, Diddy was trying to get out of jail. Diddy was trying to, like, talk to the judge. I'm like, sir, you are a convicted felon. At one point, they said he, like, raised his hand and was, like, trying to get the judge's attention. And I was like, sir, you are not in a classroom. You are in a court of law. Let's go through this real quick. It's not too much. I did a summary for social media. So this is Diddy trial, day 34, the verdict aftermath. The title of this episode is named after this post. And this recap is sourced from CNN, NBC News, and Washington Post. At 9:52 a.m. yesterday, the jury reached a verdict in the Diddy trial. We've already gone over what that was. CNN reports that Diddy sat with his hands clasped in his lap when the reading of the verdict began. When not guilty was announced for Rico, he put his head in his hand. CNN reports he did a subtle fist bump when not guilty was announced for the second of the two sex trafficking charges. Those are the two charges that would have put him away for a really, really long time. And with Rico, the feds could have gone after the money. The judge thanked the jury for their, quote, tremendous sacrifice and informed them that the press will likely be seeking them for interviews. And he told the jury that it's up to them if they decide to talk. He did caution them not to speak about details of deliberations or the point of view of other jurors. The defense requested that Diddy be released yesterday, the day of the verdict, on, quote, appropriate conditions. And defense notes that Diddy has been in jail for the last 9 months. I think they also, I don't have this written here, but I believe I read, they were like, usually for a charge, something like, transportation of prostitutes, this is not something that would have landed someone in jail while they wait for trial. So since that's all he's been convicted of, then, you should let him out. Defense says if Diddy is set free, he will go home to Miami. They note that he does not have access to his plane. It's somewhere, I think, in Maui, I read. Also, he's not a flight risk because his entire family is in the U.S. Defense said that 3 to 5 of his family members can sign onto a bond. The feds are absolutely opposed to Diddy getting out, and they said that they are seeking 51 to 63 months, so roughly 5 years and change, max, for the guilty charge. And I was like, that's it? I don't know if that's like 63 months each or 63 months for both. Initially, they said they were going after the full 20 years. Transportation of prostitutes is 10 years maximum. I have a note here that any sentence that Diddy receives will include the 9 months that he's already served in jail. And I also have a note here that the defense is seeking a sentence of 21 to 27 months. So a little over 3 years. Wait. So 3 years. Jesus. I ain't really slept, y'all. Stay with me. Feds note, in explaining why Diddy should not get out, that multiple people testified about abuse and drug use, and the defense didn't ever deny it. They also point out that Diddy, quote, continued to commit a litany of crimes knowing he was under federal investigation. Feds argue Diddy will commit more crime if released. Defense says Diddy would be, quote, nothing short of a fool if he violated any condition set by the court upon release. To which I made a note. Have you met your client? Do you know who you're dealing with? I know what you get paid to stay in court, but surely you must have some independent thought that lets you know your client doesn't do rules very well. Just saying. The judge said he would consider whether or not to let Diddy out and that he would get back to everybody at 5 p.m. He told everybody to take a break in the meantime. Before Diddy left the courtroom, CNN reports he, quote, kneeled in front of his chair and bowed his head like he was praying. When he stood up, he faced the gallery and clapped, prompting the gallery to clap and cheer with him. Diddy faced his family beaming. He said, "Thank you. Love you, Mom. I love you. I love you. I love you." His family and friends erupted into applause. Some family members wiped tears from their eyes. Still reporting from CNN, says after Combs left the courtroom, the family section started chanting, "Dream Team, Dream Team, Dream Team" to the lawyers, who slapped each other on the back and embraced. One of the defense attorneys began hugging Diddy's family members with tears rolling down her cheeks. CNN reports that outside the courthouse, some onlookers celebrated the verdict as well by spraying each other with baby oil. Others chanted, free puff," and a nearby restaurant played Bad Boy for Life. Deontay Nash, remember him? He was one of Cassie's friends. He was also a former stylist for Bad Boy. He's also the one that said he hooked Cassie up with Michael B. Jordan. Him. He sent a letter to the judge asking the judge not to free Diddy before sentencing. He wrote, quote, "Mr. Combs has a long, well-documented history of violent, coercive, and retaliatory behavior. Over the years, he has repeatedly escaped meaningful accountability, and each time this has only reinforced his sense of impunity. If he is released now, I have no doubt he will see it as yet another license to continue intimidating, threatening, and harming people who challenge or expose him." In addition to Mr. Nash, Cassie Ventura Fine, also sent a letter to the judge, at least through her lawyer, also asking the judge not to release Diddy. It says, quote, "Cassie believes that Diddy is likely to pose a danger to the victims who testified in this case, including herself as well as the community." The defense submitted a letter to the judge proposing the circumstances for Diddy's release. This sounds very similar to the one that they sent early on when Diddy was first arrested by the feds 9 months ago. But a $1 million bond co-signed by Diddy, his mother, sister, and Chance's mom. Diddy's travel would be restricted to parts of Florida near the Miami residence, I'm going to assume, California, his LA residence, New York, and New Jersey. And then Diddy would surrender his passport. He would submit to drug testing and then, quote, "all other standard conditions of pretrial supervision." So this is what the judge deliberated on. 5 p.m. rolls around. Diddy returns to court. I think it was NBC News reported that he was holding a piece of paper with Psalm 91 written on it. The judge denied his bail, and he told Diddy, quote, "You full-throatedly," this is the second time that term has come up in this trial, and I was like, given the context, y'all got to absolutely stop using this term. "You full-throatedly, in your closing argument, told the jury that there was violence here, and domestic violence is violence." The judge also notes that there was violence and illegal conduct after Diddy's homes were raided, and he knew he was being investigated. The judge says, quote, "This highlights a disregard for the rule of law and a propensity of violence." CNN reports when the judge denied bail, Diddy's mouth dropped and his eyes widened. The judge has set Diddy's sentencing for October 3rd. The judge has set another hearing for next week, next Tuesday, to set the sentencing schedule. The feds are open to the sentencing being moved up. They said they won't do any unnecessary delay, so it will likely be before September, but it ain't going to be today. The defense tells the judge that Diddy would like to speak to him. Every outlet reported this. Only one noted that, nothing came of this. I don't know exactly what the judge's reaction was, but clearly it wasn't to speak to him. The defense tells the judge that Diddy has enrolled in, quote, "a batterers program," and that he has been a, quote, "remarkable prisoner" while he's been in jail. This is CNN reporting again. It says, before leaving the courtroom, Diddy told his family, quote, "We're going to make it through this, and I'll see you when I get out." He blew kisses to his family and friends, told them he loved them, and encouraged them to remain strong. He also specifically told his mother that he loved her. So that should bring us up to speed. And now we're going to speak to Kim Foxx because I have so many questions. Please welcome former Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx to Ratchet and Respectable. Kim, I feel like I start every episode this way now. Like this verdict, what is this?
Yeah, well, what I said yesterday, I texted you yesterday and said at a minimum, that's what I said, at a minimum, they're going to get him on the prostitution charges.
Mm-hmm.
What I felt yesterday when they had the verdict on the few charges, but not on that RICO charge, was I knew that, if they're like, oh, we're hopelessly deadlocked, if you will, that there were people in that room who wanted to convict him, that there were people in that room who felt comfortable enough with the evidence that they were like, look, we got him. The struggle was going to be on those people who didn't. So it became clear that there were people in that room who didn't want to do it. So today I was not surprised. I knew the prostitution charges. I have to be honest. I knew after yesterday that today would be difficult.
I had mostly lost faith in the sex trafficking just because I know it's just super, I don't know if difficult is the right word, challenge.
Yeah.
It just seems very, very hard to get a conviction against brutalizing a woman in any way, whether it's sex trafficking, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's rape. It's always seems to be an uphill battle. But I did think that RICO was pretty much a slam dunk. Like between the bribery and the drug traffic, or not the drug trafficking, but the intent to distribute, I was like, you can't argue with that. Like it's clear cut. Like you've got the paper trail of it. You've got multiple people saying like, he gave me drugs. I got him drugs. I saw him give people drugs. Like, and then they asked about distribution. The jury sent a letter or a note to the judge asking about distribution, like to clarify. And I was like, oh, okay. Like they just need some extra clarity on what it is. Like that should be RICO, easy, and no RICO.
Yeah, that note actually flagged for me that was a good sign for the defense, right?
Mm.
That note, like, what if they asked for it? Because that was the note. The note was, is it still distribution if he's giving drugs that someone else asked for? And that goes back to what I've been talking about in the past, right? These jurors are lay people. They are not lawyers. They're not prosecutors. They're not defense attorneys. They are your average person who may not be entangled in the system and are getting all of this information for the first time. And the thing that I think was always going to be an issue, and we talked about this, nobody had clean hands. The RICO allegations go back 20 years. And so people would be asking themselves, well, why now? And everybody was doing drugs. Cassie was doing drugs. Jane was doing drugs.
He was doing drugs.
Everybody's doing drugs. You mean to tell me you're going to ask me to send somebody to prison, potentially for a really long time, just this guy and not them? Like that is, I think, what was part of the struggle for some on the RICO charges, because you're right. Like, I do think that they made a clear case for bribery. I think they made a clear case for arson, the predicate offenses, if you will, those underlying cases that can get you to the RICO charge. I think the struggle was those offenses happened so long ago that, the domestic violence instance at the Intercontinental, the defense said, yep, he did that. He is a domestic abuser.
But that's not what he's on trial for.
That is not what he's on trial for. He's on trial for that as a part of this bigger thing. And if a juror is sitting there saying, well, why didn't they get him on this, and this, then? The other piece being, Cassie got that settlement. And if I'm in the jury room feeling conflicted, it might be, you know what? She got paid. She got, $20 million that she deserved. I feel comfortable not pursuing that. And then the other thing I'll say is what I've been saying, is what I just text you, like one name, Jane.
Yeah.
And it is no disrespect to Jane and her lived experience, but she became, I think, a way for the defense to make the case of consent, of people who benefited from this. They brought up in the closing arguments about the physical altercation with Jane that didn't happen any time before that Cassie lawsuit dropped. And so there was enough with her that I think for jurors, who yesterday said no on sex trafficking, they were almost immediate on no on sex trafficking with Jane, and then put that over to Cassie as well.
Paradise is back.
It's finally here.
In a new location, Costa Rica. There will be adventure, drama, and romance.
All gas, no brakes. That's my vibe.
Ready to find some love.
But it wouldn't be paradise without surprises along the way.
These kids need to learn.
That's right. Your favorite Golden alums are crashing the beach.
We bring in a party, baby.
Bachelor in Paradise premieres Monday at 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
I'm very dismayed about the outcome. I don't think that's a secret to anybody listening. I worry about two things. I worry about the victims. I worry about all the witnesses, really, for separate reasons, but especially like Cassie and Jane. It's like you come on the stand and they're subpoenaed, right? They didn't necessarily want to be there, but they come on the stand and they share the worst moments of their lives. Like, and this is how they describe them. That's not me projecting, but they share this for the world to read, for bloggers and podcasters and lay people, whoever, to parse over forevermore. And then nothing comes of it. They're going to wear in some form or fashion a scarlet letter for the rest of their lives because of what happened to them, while he gets, likely a slap on the wrist for it.
Yeah, that is always the risk. And I think that is the struggle that I'm with today in this conversation, that, it is pop news and pop culture, but these are real people who, if, taken on its face, and it wasn't even disputed, right? It wasn't disputed by Diddy that he beat up Cassie, that there were people urinating in her mouth for his pleasure, that he was forcing her to have sex with strangers on her birthday. Those things, and people could say, oh, she signed up. No. Fucking somebody with a UTI repeatedly?
God.
Like that, nobody signs up for that. Nobody wants that. And that she's a mom, right? Her children, years from now, may be able to have access to this. Her family.
Not even maybe, they will.
They will. Her parent, everything that they have gone through to hold him accountable for his actions, I won't necessarily say are for naught. For Cassie in particular, I have a tremendous amount of respect. She got her money, right? She could have gotten her money and said, I don't want anything to do with this, right? Gina never came to court. They said they couldn't find Gina, and it ain't hard to find Gina. I think I saw her on TMZ in a grocery store parking lot in Vegas, right? She chose not to do that, and that's her right. Cassie, who had all of this information, all of this horror that happened to her, and had already gotten a check, did the brave thing, which was to come and sit in that box 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
The trauma that she was feeling and reliving, that her baby is feeling, because she believed it was the right thing to do. So my heart goes out for the victims here, because I believe them. And he never disputed it. He never disputed what was happening. What he said was that they wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also concerned about the witnesses that testified. Deontay, I can't remember his last name, the stylist.
Deontay Nash, yeah.
Deontay Nash. But he sent a letter to the judge, which is, posted all over the websites now, basically asking not to release Diddy. And he was like, he's abusive and violent, and he retaliates, and he's vengeful, and please do not let him out of jail because it is not safe.
Thankfully for them, the judge agreed.
Yeah.
Right. The judge denied bail. I was a little concerned at first, because these two charges for which he was convicted, I think ordinarily you might not see someone sit in jail pre-trial because of that.
Yeah.
But this judge laid it out. This judge said basically, what I just said. You haven't refuted any of this. You haven't. Your lawyers said you beat that woman, that you're a domestic abuser. Your lawyers said
You're jealous.
that you engage in this behavior. You're jealous. You're a fighter. You're the defense to you going and blowing up Cuddy's car was like, yeah, you were there, but you didn't do it.
It wasn't like I would never do that. I just wanted to have a conversation. It was like, yeah, I was trying to fight him. Like, what?
Yeah, like so the judge is like, you've painted a picture of a man who is vindictive and who is violent, who does not believe that the rules apply to him. And therefore, even though he was convicted on what we would consider these lesser charges, he is a demonstrable threat. And he's also, these witnesses are also concerned because you saw it. It's people doing crazy shit like pouring baby oil on themselves and chanting and going around and like the cult like atmosphere of these folks who are feeling emboldened to do wild things. There has to be some ownership that this isn't right. This isn't right.
And I don't think the jury was thinking about this at all. I think they just, voted how they voted. But what message do you think that it sends to women in general, women who are victims, survivors of abuse who want to speak up? Like for me, there's definitely been things that have happened that I never spoke up about, and I don't feel necessarily empowered to do so anymore now.
That is the tough part here. I've thought about this all day, and I think a couple things. One, that you're talking about well over a decade of abuse, and it did not come out until Cassie filed that lawsuit. And what I've said repeatedly that still sticks in my heart, the public didn't know what Diddy was doing until she filed that lawsuit.
Yeah.
But that circled it.
Yeah.
All the dirty hands, all of the industry folks, all of the people whose hands may not have been directly tied to this, but you knew not to stay late at those parties. You'd heard the stories of what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
You saw the faint, sign of a bruised eye under the makeup, and you elevated this man. He called those things king nights because he felt like a king.
Yeah.
Wild king nights. And you don't get to be a king without a kingdom that acquiesces to your needs. And so it wasn't just that inner circle who had direct knowledge and those women didn't feel safe enough to go to. This KK person who, however, $600,000 that she was making every year, watching another woman be beaten, crying for help, hiding, and you are going to go bring her out. That's more than just the system failing. What I want for women who are struggling in abusive relationships or who've been assaulted is to have a network around you before you even have to get to a courtroom. Because by the time you get to the courtroom and are pinning your hopes on fairness and justice there, it's too late.
It's too late. Yeah. What can we expect from the sentencing? Any insight there?
In federal sentencing, they have guidelines that they go through and they have what we call points that they assign to a defendant. And what they'll look at is, has he ever been convicted of a crime before? Does he have a criminal background? The nature of this particular offense? Based on my reading, there's a maximum sentence of 10 years for each of these charges. So you could be looking at 20 years if they did them what we say, consecutively, so back to back. Or a judge typically will do it concurrently. So that means, if you sentence them on both, the 10 years can run at the same time. So he could be looking at anywhere from 4 or 5 years or 2 years, depending on what the prosecution is asking for, up to 10 years.
Do you think he will actually serve time?
I think what's interesting is he has been in there not quite a year yet. The defense is going to argue that he is serving time, that he is not going to have gotten away with, if you say give him 2 years. In federal time, he's got to serve 85% of whatever it is. I think based on the judge's comments today denying bail, he has sat through all of this. I feel like he understands where the public is on this. He would be hard-pressed to not give him some time. How substantial the time, I don't know. But he would be hard-pressed to not give him some time.
I feel like the public is very split, like almost 50-50, where there are people who are, very devastated, like, I can't believe this just happened. And then people, like you said, who are like outside the courthouse spraying baby oil on each other. Like there's a online equivalent of people who are celebrating because they were like, well, they shouldn't have gone after him anyway. He was a grown-ass man. He has he likes to have sex different than you and I, but why are we prosecuting this? None of this was a crime.
I said on the episode that just went up earlier today, and I'm like, even if you don't think it's illegal, do you think it's ethical? Do you think it's moral? That's got to count for something, right? It's got to count for something. But I think where we are in why I had been so interested is that whenever we talk about these cases, whether it's R. Kelly, whether it's Russell Simmons, whether it's now Diddy, the way that we talk about survivors, the way we talk about these women will outlast however much time Diddy has, right? Like there's a bigger cultural problem that we have here. And especially when it comes to sex trafficking, I think really people were struggling because they love this man. And that part of this, the survivor victim re-victimization, the not believing that you can be hurt by someone and still love them is the thing that we have to crack that nut, right? These clowns who are squirting oil on themselves and ain't got shit to do during the workday, then debase themselves like this. I'm less worried about them, right? Like, I'm less worried about that woman who is like debasing herself with oil for a man you would never be in his house. But I'm more worried about those conversations that you're talking about that's like the shrugs, and that say, well, they went back. And I struggled. This is not legal commentary, but it had been on my heart, and I was like, I feel compelled to share, especially now. I'm a survivor. I was abused as a child, and my abuser died a couple years ago, and my family asked me to help write the obituary because I'm a good writer. I'm a good writer. And some of them knew what happened. I think most people knew what happened. And the abuse happened, 40-something years ago. I wrote that obituary. You wrote it? I wrote it. I wrote it. To the chagrin of my then husband, my children. I went to my therapist and was like, I did this thing. The abuse happened to me. I still have PTSD decades later. It happened. And I found myself with this man can't hurt me, is in the ground, and I still felt some compulsion to protect him. Wow. Watching all of this and hearing these conversations and why would they and how, I understood it deeply. And I think that there are, for the audience who is listening to this, I can spit legal knowledge all day. I'm a trained lawyer. But more importantly, I'm a survivor who understands those trauma bonds that I think the prosecution could have done a more to explain that, because that's where people are lost right now. People really just like these women were out to get money. It was not about the money because Cassie had it. And she sat there 8 months pregnant, trying to get her name back. Anything we take out of this conversation that isn't pure pop culture, that isn't pure like judgment, is that survivors do what they do because the trauma that has been inflicted on them, the need to be safe, the shame that is attached to them, the pleasing of others for their own protection. That's what we saw here. And I just want to tell people listening to this that this isn't a sport. This isn't Diddy 1, Cassie 0. These are people. And in your family, in your church, in your sorority, in your neighborhood, there's survivors who are watching how you react to this. Yes. That is going to force them to go into a place where they aren't going to be safe. Yes. Justice did not serve his victims with this verdict. I commend, he had a strong defense team, but the best that money could buy. It 10 of them motherfuckers sitting around him to have him. Most people don't. And the prosecution put on a strong case. Did they drop the ball? Or is this on the jury? I think it's a couple things, right? Like defense said, they called in Homeland Security investigators and did these big raids to get baby oil and Astroglide. Like, that's for real. The question is, could this have been handled without it being a RICO case, right? And you've done an exemplary job of explaining what RICO is and all of that. That question that kept coming up, why him, why now? And without something more solid, like, I think the argument will be that they didn't have to charge it this way. It's a loss. This is a big L, and when I say winners and losers, for the prosecution. The U.S. Attorney's Office, especially in that district, has a very high conviction rate. The charges for which he was acquitted, those were the big ones. Those were the big guns. They lost here. And I think they'll be evaluating, did they miscalculate how the public would view this? One of the things I think they should evaluate, too, is that prosecution team didn't have any women of color on there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that matters. Having sat through 2 R. Kelly trials, that first trial, the prosecution team did not have anybody of color. I was in the background, sitting in a room with Sparkle, making sure she had water and whatnot, but not out front. For all of those questions where they're like, the government is trying to get us, the government is doing, you need someone who can relate to that jury, who can translate to that jury, who can say, hey, it's okay. So that's something that I would think about. And then the other part is, did it look reactionary? This blockbuster lawsuit, and then all of a sudden is this a case that they should have brought? And we would say yes, because we know from the testimony what happened, but they're going to be evaluating for a long time. This is a big loss for that district.
Hit pause on whatever you're listening to and hit play on your next adventure. Stay 2 nights and get a $50 Best Western gift card. Life's a trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Visit bestwestern.com for complete terms and conditions.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
I've been on hold to make a doctor's appointment for 23 minutes now. The automated voice has told me 47 times that my call is very important to them. I'm starting to think that they don't think my call is important at all.
With Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you'll get help fast without having to remain on the line to make an appointment. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 110,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 16th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends 7/16/25.
Did the jury fumble this, or is this a case the jury made their decision based on the evidence that was presented and the evidence just wasn't strong enough?
This is all about credibility. So on the sex trafficking charges, it is, do you believe that what happened to Cassie and what happened to Jane was by force or coercion? And the way that you prove that is through the credibility of your witnesses. As I've said before, I think Jane was a struggle for them. For all of the things that the defense attorney said in closing, the things that I had hinted to, who she had a child with, the gravitating towards providers, the going to the freak off without him, the showing her breasts,
all of that came up.
All of that. And again, I'm not victim blaming, but if I'm sitting in that room as a juror, and this is all foreign to me, right? I'm not studying sex crimes. And I think of sex trafficking as a child pulled off a street or something. These adults behaving like this, if I'm that juror and I gotta look at that credibility and say beyond a reasonable doubt that this was coercion, I'm not saying they dropped the ball. I'm saying it is a difficult task that they had, and the credibility issue, particularly as it related to Jane, I think was fundamental. I think that transferred over to Cassie, where they did have her saying that she liked some of these events, that she was sexually emboldened. And again, you got people in there who all of this might be foreign, right? All of this is like, what do you mean you let you have sex with somebody else in front of them? And their own biases, their own judgments can get them to say, I'm not going to find this person guilty. Why him and not you? Why should Diddy go to jail for even paying for the prostitutes for the days that you liked it? For the days that you like, oh, that was a great session, he's going to prison and you're not. Those jurors, that's some of the things that, and maybe over the course of the next couple of days, we'll hear from them. But that's the tricky part about a jury, is they get to bring their own biases and their own lived experiences to this. And sometimes they miss the mark.
But I was watching, I guess it was CNN earlier today, and they were saying that he has more than, 5 dozen, not 5 lawsuits, but 5 dozen lawsuits, civil suits waiting for him when he gets out. So he could be a free man, but he's still going to be tied up in court for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. And hemorrhaging money to defend it. That was the other thing, too. The RICO, the fail on the RICO means that they can't go after his assets, but those assets are going to be tied up in defending himself in these lawsuits for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Isn't that what one of the ways that R. Kelly's money got drained was the settlements and also the lawsuits defending himself?
Oh, absolutely. And he couldn't read. So,
I mean, it's a fact. It's not it's true.
It's true. It's true. He was unable. I'm not in any way discriminating, but people were also like taking from him because he could not
read. Yes. Just say like half of those lawsuits are frivolous. People are making up things. Like people are just, money chasing. But you still got 30 left that may have some credibility to them that have to be sorted through. And that's going to take years.
And even with the half, you still have to have a lawyer to work to say, no, this is bull. And so you're spending money. Those lawyers who are on retainer for him, who know that these are coming, you still have to pay however many hundreds of dollars an hour or however many thousands of dollars a month in retainer for the foreseeable future. That is the drain. The drain isn't even just going to be how much you pay for the settlements. Yeah. And the other thing is he's also emboldened. Now you can't embarrass him. The leverage that you have in a lot of these lawsuits is you don't want the world to know that I'm saying you did these things to me. He has nothing to lose at this point in terms of everything is out there in terms of embarrassment for him. He gonna want to fight him. I don't see him trying to settle because he's like, for what?
Do you think he gets his life back, his lifestyle back? Like, does he get to be white party celebrity, A-list friends? Does he get to be that again? Or is he going to be ostracized kind of like OJ?
I mean, you tell me.
I call it.
That's your world, right? From my vantage point, he feels more akin to a Harvey Weinstein, right? That is you just got too much smoke. He missed his flight, to do yoga with Russ over in Bali. You know what I mean? He can't come back. Everybody knows, and he hadn't had it all laid out. We've heard the stories, we've seen the documentaries, and he just hiding. I think it's really hard for him. It should be really hard for him to acclimate back into the life that he had without some level of contrition. And I haven't seen it. But that's not my world. I don't know.
I can't call it because I was literally, again, the episode that dropped today, I was talking about Usher being over in Venice for the Bezos wedding. Bezos is very MAGA identified, which is, obviously anti everybody, brown, black. And I was like, you, sir, with, you are a black man with, I'm not sure what his wife is. She's not black. She's brown. Why are y'all over there? What are you doing? Usher, he also pops up in Bali and he hangs out with Russell, several people. Russell doesn't come over here much anymore, but they go over to Bali to hang out with him. He's got, tons of women. There's a documentary. Then people still respect him and want to hang out with him.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens to Diddy. The climate of everything right now is so up is down, left is right, topsy-turvy.
I don't know. I think for the celebrities who were holding their breath that their names weren't going to be dropped in the trial, the things that they bore witness to, the things that they saw, I don't want to get caught up in that. I think that alienates him a little bit. You don't want that smoke. Even the smoke around, even before, who is he going to name drop? What's going to happen? And you saw people distancing themselves from him. He is now a convicted felon.
Yes.
He's a federal convicted felon right now. Not for drug sales, right? See, we also have, we got some of our biggest celebrities who were former drug dealers and, talk about that and parlay that into like legitimate businesses and the like. And we have tremendous amount of respect for them. But this is someone who's been alleged to have committed heinous sex crimes, and the details of which were out. I think somebody would be hard pressed if I was doing crisis comms or work for folks. I would tell my client not to be around that.
I wonder if he's going to do like the interview circuit and all of that at some point, or is he just going to like, I don't see him. He has so much ego. I don't think he'll actually like just lay low.
Of course not. Did you see that he like got the crowd to like clap?
Yeah, and the dramatic, he got on his knees and was like kneeling on the chair, and I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Now the circus begins.
And the getting the crowd to clap. Like when I read that, I'm like, that's him. So yeah, he's gonna do the circuit. Yeah, who does the interview? Does he find Gail and say, I got one for you? Or who does the interview? And I think that's also the question. Do we give him that space?
Somebody will give it to him.
Yeah.
At the very least, I mean, go on the Breakfast Club. If they do hip hop, like I'm just,
I know,
and it's a large platform. I'm not no shame. I like Charlotte. I like
shame. No, that's me being like, yeah, I get it, and I get the weight that Charlamagne has. And he wants to be on TV. He wants to be his ego. He wants to bring Barbara Walters on a seance back to life. He is worthy of bringing
the seance with Barbara. I just watched her documentary the other day. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's why I thought of her. He wants that. He wants a tear. He didn't get to speak at trial. There's all of this stuff that happened. Don't forget his daughters were there the other day. Like, you gotta save face with them. You've got to save, face with your sons. And one could argue maybe they knew and all of the like, but you are a gray-haired 55-year-old man with children that you want to be able to tell a story that is different than a monster that was portrayed. So he gonna try to tell it. He really is, in the broadest audience possible.
God, we gotta suffer through another round of this nonsense.
Absolutely.
Oh dear. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about? I love to ask you this at the end of every episode. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that I should be considering that you have like legal insight on or just perspective on that just, it's over my head?
I want to commend you for breaking Rico down, even though we didn't get a finding of it, and for playing it straight up, right? This is what the facts are. This is what they said in court. This is what it is. And ultimately, this is how it goes down, right?
Yeah.
That is what it means to be judged by a jury of your peers. So what I would say to people is sign up for jury duty. Don't ignore the summons when it comes. Don't leave this to other people. To me, the big takeaway for the general public is we need people with lived experiences in those rooms. We need people, like I said, as I talk about my trauma, as I've been triggered, to be in a room to be able to say, yeah, survivors can still have affection for their abusers. You, as a survivor, can say, yes, you cannot consent today and still consent today. Like, we need those experiences in the room. Don't disengage. Do not allow this case to give permission to say that we abdicate responsibility. We owe it to them. We owe it to these survivors to show up when we can and however we can.
Yes. And thank you as well for sharing that piece of you with me and the listeners as well.
I've thought about it for days because it's actually something truly that I still struggle with. And there's a level of grace that I have to afford myself. And so when I look at this case, and again, take the celebrity out of it and hear people talk about with judgment, with lack of understanding about how these women made the choices that they made and did what they did, I felt an obligation as an expert, I'm not a artist, I'm not an actress, I'm not a dancer, I'm a lawyer and a prosecutor and a survivor. And I've done the things that these women have done.
Yeah.
And so whatever judgment that you are assigning to them because you don't think that they are worthy of it, if you think I'm a worthy individual because of my station in life, I did it too.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Kim be giving us that good insight. That's why she's my father's favorite guest. No offense to the other guests. My father loves Kim. He ain't gonna commit no crime where Kim needs to defend him, but still, he loves Kim. Thank you for listening to Ratchet and Respectable. Hopefully we ain't gotta talk about Diddy no more for a while. I need a break. In fact, I'm going on a break next week. I'll still do the podcast episode. I might do a birthday episode. If you've been around for, several years, I guess it was a Bell in Brooklyn. I used to do birthday posts every year where I would reflect on the year prior. I haven't done one since, 2018, 19? It's been a while. But there's much to reflect on over the last 7 years. Maybe we'll have a Larry-esque episode. We'll see. I'm taking my podcast mic with me on vacation. We'll see if I feel the need to share. Otherwise, we'll talk next week. Thank you for listening, as always. Bye.